Today, we need to have a very serious conversation about the absolute collapse of a global menace. If you watch the mainstream news networks right now, you are being fed a highly curated, highly sanitized version of reality. They will tell you that the Middle East is at a stalemate. They will tell you that the Iranian regime is digging in, that they are resilient, and that they are preparing for a long, drawn-out geopolitical standoff with the West. But they are lying to you. Or, at the very least, they are completely blind to what is actually happening on the ground. Because right now, behind the closed doors of Tehran, behind the heavily fortified walls of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters, the illusion of a unified Islamic Republic is shattering into a million pieces. The regime is not preparing for a war with the United States. The regime is currently fighting a vicious, bloody, physical war against itself. They are cannibalizing their own state. And there is one terrifying truth that nobody in Washington wants to admit on camera, but it explains absolutely everything. When you hear it, you will understand why the Supreme Leader has gone completely dark. You will understand why the streets of Tehran feel like a ticking time bomb. And you will understand why the United States military is suddenly positioning weapon systems that have never been used in the history of human warfare. By the end of this video, you are going to see the exact blueprint of a hyperinflationary death spiral. You are going to witness the unprecedented physical fracturing of the Iranian state media apparatus. And you are going to understand exactly how the Trump administration is using this chaos to force the total, unconditional surrender of Iran's nuclear ambitions. This isn't a prediction. This is an active, real-time autopsy of a dying empire. So pull up a chair, hit that subscribe button, and pay incredibly close attention, because the ripple effects of what is happening in Tehran today are going to dictate the global economy for the next decade. Let's get into it. To understand why the Iranian regime is currently eating itself alive, you have to look past the military parades and follow the math, because the math is absolutely devastating. Right now, the Iranian economy is trapped in a hyperinflationary death spiral that is so severe it is almost impossible for the Western mind to comprehend. We complain about 8% inflation here in the United States. We complain when a carton of eggs goes up by $2. But what is happening in Iran is not inflation. It is the systemic mathematical annihilation of a society. As of this morning, the Iranian rial has suffered a catastrophic, absolute collapse. We are looking at an exchange rate of 1.8 million rials to a single United States dollar. Let that number sink in. 1.8 million to 1. The currency is effectively worthless paper. It is confetti. Now let's pivot to the street level, because macroeconomics only matter when you see how they destroy a human life. Let me paint a picture for you. The median monthly income for a working-class citizen in Iran right now is sitting at a meager 200 million rials. Sounds like a lot, right? You're a multi-millionaire. But when you apply that 1.8 million exchange rate, that entire month of backbreaking labor, that entire salary equals roughly 111 US dollars for an entire month. And here is where the math becomes a death sentence. The price of basic sustenance has skyrocketed. A simple basic hamburger in Tehran right now costs roughly 5 million rials. Think about that equation. You work for 30 days, you earn 200 million rials, and a single burger costs you 5 million. You could buy exactly 40 burgers with your entire month's salary. That leaves zero money for rent, zero money for electricity, zero money for medicine, zero money for clothing. This isn't just an economic recession. This is mathematical starvation. The working class has been entirely priced out of survival. And it gets exponentially worse because the media won't tell you that up to 70% of Iran's national food supply is completely reliant on imports. They do not grow enough food to feed their own people. They have to buy it from the outside world. But how do you buy millions of tons of wheat, rice, and meat from the global market when your currency is totally radioactive? How do you pay global suppliers when your money is worthless and international banks refuse to touch your transactions due to American secondary sanctions? You don't. The supply chains freeze, the grocery store shelves go empty, and the populace is pushed to the absolute brink of systemic, widespread starvation. Now, when a population is pushed to starvation, the social contract breaks. And to understand the absolute panic inside the regime right now, you have to remember what happened just a few months ago. You have to remember the legacy of brutal suppression that is still haunting the streets. Back in January, the Iranian regime realized they were running completely out of cash. The sanctions were biting, the oil revenue was drying up, and they needed billions to fund their proxy terror networks across the Middle East. So what did they do? They executed one of the most vicious wealth transfers in modern history. The regime intentionally and artificially devalued their own currency even further. They did this to wipe out their internal debts and to enrich the IRGC elite who held hard foreign assets. But in doing so, they completely decimated the Iranian merchant class, the bazaar owners, the shopkeepers, the people who actually run the everyday economy. Their life savings were evaporated overnight, and the people did what starving, desperate people do. They rose up. Millions of people poured into the streets in absolute outrage. And how did the Islamic Republic respond? They didn't negotiate. They didn't offer economic relief. They opened fire. The regime slaughtered tens of thousands of their own citizens in the streets. They turned their cities into literal abattoirs. They threw bodies into mass graves and washed the blood off the pavement. The mainstream media has largely moved on from the January uprisings, but the Iranian people haven't. The blood is still wet in their memory. The root cause of that anger, the stolen wealth, the absolute corruption, the starvation, remains completely unresolved. The rage didn't vanish, it just went underground. It has been boiling, pressurizing, and waiting for the right moment to explode. And that brings us to the most shocking development of this entire crisis. The explosion isn't just happening in the streets anymore. The explosion is happening inside the regime itself. For 40 years, the Islamic Republic has maintained control through one incredibly powerful tool: a total, absolute monopoly on the state narrative. The propaganda machine was impenetrable. The regime spoke with one voice, dictated by the supreme leader and enforced by the state media. If you deviated from the script, you disappeared. But right now, that once impenetrable propaganda machine is violently devouring itself. Because of the economic collapse, because of the post-conflict power vacuum, and because the supreme leader has conspicuously vanished from the public eye, the various factions within the regime are panicking. They know the ship is sinking, and they are fighting to the death over the life rafts. We are currently witnessing a vicious public civil war erupt between the major state media outlets. On one side, you have Tasnim News, which represents the slightly more pragmatic, pro-negotiation wing of the security apparatus. They look at the math, they look at the starvation, and they realize the regime will not survive the year without a deal with the West. On the other side, you have Raja News, backed by the most radical hardline factions of the IRGC. These are the zealots who would rather see the country burned to the ground than surrender an inch to the United States. But this isn't just a war of words. This isn't just a couple of rival journalists writing mean articles about each other. This has escalated far beyond digital skirmishes. This factional war has turned into kinetic, physical violence. We are seeing reports of physical assaults on media headquarters. We are seeing regime thugs attacking rival regime journalists. They are literally beating each other in the streets over who gets to control the narrative of a dying state. Do you understand the gravity of this? The state has lost its monopoly on violence. The regime has lost control of its own mouthpieces. When a totalitarian government can no longer agree on what lies to tell the public, and when their enforcers are physically attacking each other, the state has fundamentally collapsed. The internal rot is terminal. And while the Iranian regime is busy tearing out its own throat, the United States is quietly setting up the ultimate checkmate. If you want to know why President Trump and his administration are completely unbothered by the chaos in Tehran, you have to look at what the United States military is currently moving into position. Because they are not preparing for a fair fight, they are preparing to demonstrate absolute apocalyptic dominance. Right now, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, is officially requesting the first-ever combat deployment of hypersonic missiles to the Middle Eastern theater. Let me explain exactly what that means because the media severely underplays this. A traditional cruise missile flies at hundreds of miles an hour. It can be tracked by radar. It can be intercepted by advanced air defense systems. A hypersonic missile is an entirely different beast. We are talking about a weapon that travels at Mach 5, Mach 10, or even faster. That is thousands of miles per hour. Furthermore, they are highly maneuverable in the atmosphere. They do not follow a predictable ballistic arch. What does this mean in practical terms? It means a hypersonic missile cannot be tracked and it cannot be stopped. If the United States fires a hypersonic weapon at a bunker in Tehran, the people inside that bunker will be vaporized before the radar system even registers that a launch occurred. It is a weapon of instantaneous, undeniable destruction. And here is the most humiliating part for the Iranian military. They have no defenses left anyway. Over the past several months of covert and overt operations, their air defense networks have been systematically dismantled. Their naval assets have been neutralized. President Trump has openly mocked the Iranian regime on the global stage, pointing out that their skies are completely naked. They are sitting ducks. So put yourself in the shoes of an IRGC commander right now. Your currency is worthless. Your people are starving and mathematically incapable of buying food. Your internal factions are physically assaulting each other. And the United States just parked a weapon off your coast that can vaporize your headquarters in 3 minutes, and you don't even have a radar system left to see it coming. This isn't a military standoff. This is a hostage situation, and the United States holds all the keys, which brings us to the diplomatic endgame. For decades, the global political establishment has loved diplomatic theater. They love flying to Geneva, staying in 5-star hotels, shaking hands for the cameras, and signing toothless treaties that Iran would immediately violate. It was a massive, lucrative industry of time wasting. The current U.S. administration has taken that entire diplomatic playbook and set it on fire. There is no theater. There are no handshakes. The United States is operating from a position of absolute unyielding leverage. Washington is refusing to entertain the traditional diplomatic song and dance. They are dictating the terms remotely, treating the Iranian regime not as a sovereign equal, but as a defeated belligerent. The ultimatum is brutally simple. There is no middle ground. There is no partial enrichment allowance. There is no sunset clause. The unyielding baseline for any negotiation, for the lifting of any sanctions, for the survival of the regime itself, is the total, unconditional, and verifiable eradication of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Period. You either dismantle the centrifuges, hand over the enriched uranium, and allow unrestricted inspections of every single military installation in the country, or your economy goes to zero, your people starve, and your military gets vaporized by a weapon you can't even see. The regime is trapped. They are holding a pair of twos, and the United States has a royal flush. They are screaming into the void, fighting among themselves while the walls close in. But before we wrap this up, I need to break the fourth wall for a second, because this part directly involves you. Yes, you, the person watching this video on your phone or your computer right now. You might think that because you live thousands of miles away from Tehran, you are insulated from this war. But the Iranian regime knows they cannot beat the United States on a kinetic battlefield. They know they cannot win an economic war. So they have shifted a massive amount of their remaining resources into the only battlefield they have left, the digital space. Right now, Iranian sleeper cells, state-sponsored hackers, and massive sophisticated bot networks are operating entirely unchecked on Western platforms. They are in the comment sections of YouTube, they are on Twitter, they are on TikTok, they are actively manipulating algorithms to spread demoralization, to sow division in American politics, and to push pro-regime propaganda directly into your feed. They are trying to convince the American public that this strategy isn't working, that the U.S. is the aggressor, and that we need to back down. This is digital counterinsurgency. This is psychological warfare, and you are the target. So here is the tactical call to action. You need to understand that your engagement on platforms like this is not just about helping a creator grow. It is an active countermeasure against foreign digital manipulation. When you hit that like button, when you share this video, when you leave a comment, you are fighting back against the bot networks. You are pushing the truth through the algorithm. You are actively participating in the information war, ensuring that the real story, the story of a dying cannibalistic regime, reaches the masses before the propaganda does. We are watching the collapse of an empire in real time. We are witnessing the mathematical, economic, and physical destruction of a state that has terrorized the world for 4 decades. The hyperinflation is terminal. The state media is at war with itself. The United States holds the hypersonic sword of Damocles over their heads, and the supreme leader knows it is entirely over. Do you think the regime will ultimately surrender their nuclear program, or will they choose to let their country burn to the ground? Are we about to see the greatest geopolitical collapse of the modern era? Let me know exactly what you think down in the comments below. Let's overwhelm the bots and have a real conversation about the future of the free world. If this video gave you the clarity that the mainstream media refuses to provide, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more unrelenting deep dives into the stories that actually matter. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss what is coming next. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions. I'll see you in the next one.